What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. Reworks are one of the main ways that Riot makes sure that League of Legends is going to stay relevant far into the future. You know, it's one of their ways of planning for the long term of the game. There's definitely advantages to creating new champions, like maybe attracting new demographics or getting the attention of old players that have moved on from the game, but it's definitely very important that Riot maintains that same design standard across all aspects of their game. And this is a huge part of why they spend so much time reworking champions. They're always looking to raise the bar, and every time they do it, older champions fall further and further behind and eventually become visually outdated, boring, uninteresting, or just plain bad in terms of gameplay. Fortunately, Riot are still dedicating a huge amount of development time to improving older champions, and today we've got the full list of reworks and gameplay updates of various different scales and sizes that Riot are planning to develop or are already developing in the near future. Just before we start, for those of you who are into Fortnite Battle Royale, we're starting a new Fortnite Moments channel where we're bringing you guys the best in high quality Fortnite moments, plays, highlights, and montages from the community. Check it out at the link in the description below. I think anyone who plays Fortnite would really enjoy the content. We're doing our best there. And for those of you guys who maybe aren't into Fortnite, don't worry, we're still keeping this channel League of Legends focused, while the Fortnite videos are going to be totally separate. And if you enjoyed the video, definitely leave a like on it or let us know in the comment section below. And be sure to subscribe for more videos. So first up on our list today we have Quinn, which is a champion that is kind of only ever really picked to bully melee opponents in lane. Riot kind of feels like Quinn's thematic of a Demacian scout with a trained bird is actually really cool, but her gameplay, at least in Riot's opinion, has never really lived up to the hype. Unlike most AD carries that scale to become powerhouses in the late game, Quinn's strength has always been in sort of her early or mid game, and she really lacks ways to contribute in the late game compared to other AD carry champions, particularly when it comes to team fights, since her kit is so focused on dealing with a single target. Quinn's anti-melee laning style is also a little bit problematic, since it can often feel like you stand literally no chance against her when you play against her as a melee champion. Most champions have some kind of skill expression to balance a difficult lane, and although Quinn does have her skill shot blind, she can kind of ruin a lane without ever really needing to rely on it thanks to her Volt and vulnerable damage boost. Riot seems to think that players mostly want Quinn to be a little bit more like a traditional marksman that can work a little bit better in the bot lane, but there will always be those that definitely prefer her as a top laner because she can be such an effective counterpick. And finding the middle ground is going to be really difficult, but we can expect Riot to tone down her 1v1 power in favor of a little bit more team fighting ability, which should help Quinn be more useful in the late game while also making her a strong potential pick for the bot lane. Since right now she only really has Valor for her ultimate, and even then, instead of an awesome ability, it's just a movement speed buff, so overall it could be a pretty large scale rework, but it'll definitely be a very risky one that could really polarize the player base of the Quinn mains. So hopefully it's done well. I mean, we'll have to see, but this is one that probably isn't going to be finished for a very long time. Another candidate for a larger scale rework is Wukong, who Riot mostly recognizes as being an overperformer in lower elo games, but for the most part, somewhat terrible in higher elos. Riot Meddler commented that Wukong really needs some changes to his gameplay pattern that add more versatility, which does make sense considering that despite his, I would say, interesting abilities, his playstyle does feel kind of linear. Champions like Wukong and Shaco with temporary stealth abilities do tend to appeal to the type of players that enjoy mind gaming their opponents, and although you can definitely do some cool stuff with Decoy, the rest of Wukong's kit is a little bit basic. On top of that, the recent Duskblade nerfs are likely to hurt his playability quite a lot, so he's probably due for some tune-ups just to compensate for that, hopefully. Unfortunately for Wukong fans though, he's not particularly high up on the priority list for a full update, but there's nothing stopping Riot giving him a few more exciting choices to make in-game in the meantime with a smaller gameplay update. And as somewhat of a pub stomp kind of champion, it'll be really important for Riot to add some counterplay to any changes they make so that he doesn't become too strong overall, but that comes with the risk of keeping him useless in the higher ranks, so it'll definitely take a lot of internal ideation and testing before we hear anything about a potential Wukong rework. And next up, we've actually got Ahri, who should be on the receiving end of a mini rework sometime between patch 8.5 and 8.7. The most recent League patch saw Riot making quite a large number of changes to AP items, so any tweaks to Ahri have actually been delayed until they can see how well those item changes go down. That being said, we can still expect to see some kind of changes to Ahri, her W in particular, because she's just generally a little bit unsatisfying to play. Ahri is actually viewed as one of the most balanced mid lane champions because she doesn't necessarily tend to totally run away with games or fall behind too much thanks to her farming tools and utility. The problem is that this can result in a really low impact on the games that she's actually in. If you get ahead with Ahri, it can be a little bit difficult to turn that into a significant lead for your team, and on the flip side, when you're behind, you can actually still contribute quite a lot though, thanks to her crowd control and true damage. So she never really screws things up too much, but she also has a little bit harder time carrying. The solution is to better reward players that manage to get ahead on Ahri while also minimizing her effectiveness if you're really far behind. By making her highs higher and her lows lower, Ahri should become a more interesting champion to play, more exciting, and it should really reward players that spend the time becoming adept at her. We can expect some kind of tweak to make her W more interesting and more interactive, but Riot have also toyed with the idea of giving her the Q speed boost back, although they aren't making any promises on that one, so don't get your hopes up too high. Just to be clear though, Ahri's coming update is a mini rework, so it's not going to totally change her playstyle or champion. You can expect changes to maybe 1 or 2 abilities overall, but it should have a nice effect and bring her back into the meta for sure. At least that's what they're hoping for. Now Riot have also been talking a lot recently about opening up the bot lane to more classes than just the typical AD carry and support combo. The push for a duo lane Mordekaiser failed pretty much miserably, and he ended up just being way too strong for it to be fair, or he'd just get harassed out of lane and never really get anywhere. Mord does have quite a few really interesting and exciting tools like his Dragon Ghost ability, but his previous dual lane rework changed him from a sturdy solo laner that was maybe one of the best farmers in the game into a somewhat dead champion that isn't really all that popular anymore, and really hasn't been for quite some time, whether it's in normal games, low elo, or high elo competitive. It's a real shame because Mordekaiser is one of the most recognizable characters in the game, so we're hoping that his upcoming full-scale update will restore a bit of his former glory. Now there's also a few reworks that are currently being developed that you guys have likely already heard about, but I did want to touch on a few of their key details as well as just remind everyone about the reworks that Riot is currently working on right now. Irelia is the first one we wanted to mention. Now, as a champion with a huge thematic potential that Riot has never really been able to deliver on properly. Now, don't get me wrong, Irelia has a really awesome kit and is both fun to play and a really good pick in most patches, but she's meant to be sort of this master of the levitating blades, and her kit is, well, a really bad representation of that theme. We're expecting some massive changes that will keep her working as an initiator and a lot of thematic improvements, but her playstyle could potentially be a little bit more about poking an enemy down with ranged attacks before surging in for the kill kind of thing. Now, for those of you who are worried about losing Blade Surge, Riot has confirmed that it will both stay on her kit and actually come with additional ways to reset the ability, but the rest of her kit is probably going to change really dramatically. Aatrox is another huge upcoming rework, with Riot claiming that it'll actually be the biggest pure gameplay update that they've ever done. Like Irelia, Aatrox represents a big thematic failure. He's supposed to be this insanely powerful Darkin warlord, but ever since his release, he's basically been a drain tank that is either too strong or just way too weak depending on the meta and how good his core items happen to be at the time. Aatrox's rework will probably feature a ton of gameplay changes that put more focus on his hugely powerful greatsword while still retaining a bit of elegance as a sword master to set him apart from someone like maybe Tryndamere. Also, we know for a fact that this rework is going to be super edgy, focused on death and destruction, and really play into that whole kind of theme that you'd hope for in a Darkin champion. Now, the last full-scale rework that Riot is currently developing at this time is Akali, and she's actually going to be receiving a full-scale visual gameplay update, not just a soul gameplay update. Akali's ninja assassin thematic is kind of generic, so the first thing we could maybe expect to see is Riot giving her a few more traits that make her more unique as a character. As for her gameplay, they really want to address the fact that with Akali, you kind of either dive in and get the kills and the resets that you need, or you just wander around aimlessly, never finding a chance to do your job and overall falling behind. The key tool that this visual and full gameplay update will build on is her Twilight Shroud, as it's a really iconic ability that could potentially provide some really interesting gameplay if redesigned. Hiding in plain sight is a really tense ability for both the Akali player and her opponent as well, so giving her new tools to do so while improving her laning pattern should make her a lot more exciting to play and to play against. By improving her laning phase, Riot will also reduce Akali's snowball potential a little bit because she's not going to be so reliant on getting early kills to be relevant. That's going to be it though for today's list of the upcoming reworks. I personally always get a bit nervous when reading about gameplay updates since it's so easy for Riot to neglect a champion's existing player base and just end up disappointing them with the rework, but from what they've been saying about the champions we've mentioned today, it seems like they've got a pretty good idea of the direction they need to take each one in that will hopefully keep everyone happy, and the people who are playtesting the Irelia, the Akali, the Aatrox reworks, the people who have playtested them already are saying they're pretty fun and overall really good improvements, so I'm definitely looking forward to those ones, and hopefully you're looking forward to them too. Either way, looks like that's going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.